This is Comic Geek Speak, episode 1557, Previews.
Laser beams, opinions like the seasons on everything you read in comics, movies, games, toys, artists, comic geek speak, comic geek speak, comic geek speak, comic geek speak, comic geek, uniting the world's mightiest heroes. This is.
I'm Adam Murdo.
And I'm Chris Everly.
Comic geek speak.
There we are. Welcome to the show, everyone. As your dynamic duo of the evening, myself and the esteemed Mr. Chris Eberly of Wild Pig Comics.
Honored, brother, honored.
Yep, sit down to walk you through the monthly previews catalog, give you all the highlights, lowlights, and a bunch of in-between lights for good measure. Just anything that looks interesting to us or that we think might possibly be interesting to any of you, whether or not we personally plan to buy it, we will mention here tonight.
Indeed.
But first, a couple of words from our sponsors, and as is always the case when Previews episode rolls around, this episode of Comic Geek Speak is brought to you by our good friends at the Discount Comic Book Service, the website of which may be found at www.dcbservice.com. Great place to go for those of you who are in the position of needing to order your comic books online. I mean, we always encourage folks to support your local comic book shop where possible, but some of you don't have a comic shop nearby. Goodness knows when I'm stuck in the wilds of South Jersey over the summer, DCBS has been a lifesaver to me because I have no recourse. But you can also always find a fine array of bargains on their website. This month, for example, they have a bunch of bundles going on, and we have always been big fans of the DCBS bundle on Comic Geek Speak. There is a DC New Series bundle, 50% off the entire thing, and also a bundle for DC Returning series, all of them to be published in the month of July, because that is the month being covered by this catalog of previews and this episode. There is a Marvel Secret Wars 50% off bundle, which will cost you $115.43 for every Secret Wars tie-in Marvel's producing in July. 50% off all new Marvel and DC hardcovers and trade paperbacks, 50% off certain select new issues, like number 1 issues or jumping on points, like Dark Horse's Barbed Wire number 1 and several others, of which we'll hear more later on in the episode. And just generally, it's a great way to save a little bit of money, and it'll save yourself a trip to the comic shop if such is your need or inclination. So they're a good friend of ours, and they've been sponsoring us forever. Most of us are proud and happy users of the service they provide. Go to dcbservice.com. Check them out for yourself. And in addition to that, we have a second sponsor for this episode, and that is Scribd. Scribd is like Netflix for comics. With a subscription to Scribd, you'll get access to more than 10,000 comics from Marvel, IDW, Top Shelf, Valiant, Dynamite, Archie, and more. They're the only subscription service that gives you that variety, all for one monthly price. And on top of that, you'll also get unlimited access to their huge library of e-books and audiobooks. That's more than 1 million titles altogether, all available anytime, anywhere. Head over to scribd.com/comicgeekspeak to get started with a free month. Even more importantly, Scribd makes sure you can find your way to comics and books you're going to love. They've got hundreds of collections curated by their team of editors, and as you read, they'll tailor recommendations for you based on other titles you've loved or not loved. Go to scribd.com/comicgeekspeak right now, and they'll set you up with your free month to get started. That is 30 days of unlimited reading, and you'll be supporting this show, so it's a win-win situation. That is scribd.com/comicgeekspeak. Scribd. Not scribed, but scribd.
Well shilled, my friend, well shilled.
Thank you, Chris. I aim to please.
Shall we plunge in with Dark Horse?
Oh, yes. Let's plunge in with both hands and a couple of feet, too. All right. So, yeah, that's the quality of humor you can expect from this program. So, let's begin, as usual, with Dark Horse, shall we?
Indeed. The first thing I noticed, the Tomorrows, on page 43, they told you the counterculture was dead, they were wrong. Welcome to reality. Art is illegal, everything everyone ever posted online has been weaponized against them. The reign of the corporation is quickly becoming as absolute as it is brutal, unless the tomorrows can stop it. I always love a good dystopian story. So this sounds like it could be potentially very fun.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that shows, the inevitable corporate hegemony that rules our country going to its ugliest extreme, I'm always on board for.
Mm-hmm.
So, sounds interesting.
Well, art versus corporate soullessness is becoming a pretty major dystopian trope, so hopefully this one will not disappoint.
Indeed.
Oh, the page opposite to that,
Yes.
I don't know if I'm personally interested in it, but Negative Space, it's called, on page 42. When one man's writer's block gets in the way of his suicide note, he goes for a walk to clear his head and soon uncovers a century-old conspiracy dedicated to creating and mining the worst lows of human desperation. And there's a image of some kind of horrific alien creature with rows and rows of...
It looks like something out of H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah, it kind of does.
Yeah.
Those rows and rows of tubuliform teeth. And this whole thing comes from the mind of Ryan K. Lindsay, who is known to me for writing the Rainbow Dash special from the IDW line of My Little Pony comics. So clearly he's a man of many and diverse talents, is Mr. Ryan K. Lindsay.
I always enjoy a creator who can excel in so many different genres, so that's encouraging. Page 44. I've never read. This is a reissue. Two Sisters by Matt Kint, a super spy graphic novel. I know our glorious founder Brian Deemer has spoken very highly of this work.
Oh yes, anything that's by Matt Kint pretty much is an automatic buy for Brian, and it's due largely to his affection for the super spy stuff.
And I've never read this, and I think I'm going to order this for myself because it's a World War II espionage thriller about two women who were involved in espionage against the Nazis. That sounds right up my alley. And you know what? As I think about it, I don't think I've ever read anything by Matt Kint, which is shameful. So this is a good place to start.
I think Pistol Whip is his too.
Yes, he did Pistol Whip as well.
Yeah.
Also on page 46, this looks very interesting, Murr. Did you see this? The New Deal hardcover by Jonathan Case. It's a graphic novel. The Waldorf Astoria is the classiest hotel on the Manhattan skyline in 1930s New York City. I'm always interested in that time period.
Mm-hmm.
When a charming woman checks in with a high society entourage, a bellhop and a maid get caught up in a series of mysterious thefts. The stakes quickly grow perilous, and the pair must rely on each other to discover the truth on navigating delicate class politics. The art list looks tremendous. They give a sample page here. This is on page 46. I always love the 30s and 40s, that period in American history, and if they're going to be focusing on class politics at the time as well. It looks like the maid is an African American, at least based on this one page here. So This looks like it'd be very, very much up my alley. So definitely be checking that out.
Oh, yes. A lot of different forms of conflict for Mr. Case to play with there.
Indeed. Are you familiar with his work at all? Because I'm not. I know his name, but that's it.
Yeah, same here. The name definitely rings a bell, but I can't connect it to anything that he's done.
So I'll definitely give that a shot. Looking at page 49, Rebels number 4, we'll be reviewing the first issue of Rebels by Brian Wood and Andrea Moody, or Muddy. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, in the very near future. So.
Oh, yes. And opposite that, we've got the second issue of Jeff Lemire's take on crisis stories, Black Hammer, and it's got a variant cover by the author, just like the first issue.
That's a great Golden Age riff, that variant cover.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, Black Hammer 1 wouldn't be out yet,
right?
But that's definitely something I want to try as well. Fred Van Lente on page 52. I didn't actually notice this earlier. The Resurrectionist. That's in issues 1 through 6. I haven't. Have you read this series at all?
I thought about buying it, but ultimately decided against it.
Okay. Resurrectionists are a select group of people who can not only remember their past lives, but also become them. I remember us discussing the first issue, actually, when we were looking at the previews at that time. So that sounds interesting. I enjoy his writing.
Yeah, I think I remember Shane saying the art was a little bit iffy, but beyond that, I don't know any specifics.
Okay. Let's see. What else jumped out at you for Dark Horse?
Not very much, honestly. On page 63, we've got a reproduction or a collected edition of some fairly obscure Golden Age Frank Frazetta, and it's called The Adventures of the Snowman.
Oh, I didn't even see that. Huh!
Appears to be a hard-boiled Christmas story. Christmas might actually not be involved, but it just kind of looks like a... it's the solicitation copy tells us that it's, quote, as socially complex as it is innocent, and it's also, quote, informed by World War II propaganda.
Oh, wow.
So it looks like interesting stuff, and since vintage images of snowmen is part of how I make my living, this is something I probably want to read, but hopefully in time it will be released in softcover form.
Most likely. Although $14.99 actually isn't that bad for a hardcover, because it's, when you think about it, it's 104 pages. So it's just hard. I mean, in my retail experience, hardcovers tend to be harder to sell than soft covers, with some notable exceptions. So, from a retail perspective, I always prefer the soft cover, usually.
Kind of an unusual size, too. 9 by 6 3/8.
Huh. Look at this on page 65. Alien Salvation hardcover. This is one of the most memorable alien tales ever told, now available as a premiere edition hardcover. Dave Gibbons writing, Mike Mignola penciling, Kevin Nolan is involved, Matt Hollingsworth. That's quite a team. Holy mackerel.
Yeah. A team like that, how can it not be one of the greatest aliens comic stories ever told?
Yeah. I have to check that out as well. Let's see. A lot of these are series that have been ongoing for quite some time, so I think we're going to talk too much about a lot of them. Unless something else is jumping out at you, my friend.
Well, let's see. On page 72, we've got a trade paperback of the Lady Killer miniseries by Joelle Jones and Jamie S. Rich about it looks like a late 50s, early 60s housewife who moonlights as an assassin. This was recommended by Matt Wagner. There's an interview with Mr. Wagner in the opening pages of this catalog, and that's one of the things he says that he's reading and really enjoying right now.
Well, since Wagner's one of my most favorite and most consistently reliable creators in terms of entertaining me, then I'm going to read this, because if he says it's good, then it's something I'm definitely going to try.
Well, he does think it's good. Apparently, the creators are friends of his, and it just kind of looks like it could be twisted fun in like a John Waters kind of way. I picked up the first issue, I know, but I don't think I followed through after that. So those of you who...
Did you read the first issue, or is it in the pile?
It is in the pile. Yeah, so, and I know I mentioned the first issue when we did the previews episode corresponding to that. So those of you who heard that and thought it sounded like fun or interesting otherwise, and just like me didn't follow through with buying the whole series, you can buy it all in one volume now.
And speaking of volumes, this is kind of exciting. Page 77, it looks like Dark Horse has landed the license for the EC archives because they're featuring a reissue of the Two-Fisted Tales Volume 1, which are tremendous war comics from the EC era. I mean, these are by Wally Wood, Johnny Craig, Jack Davis, Al Feldstein, John Severin. I mean, this is tremendous stuff. So, looks like, and I highly recommend, if you're interested in comic book history or just reading great pre-code comics, pre-Comics Code Authority, of course, EC archives are essential. And they've been under the Gemstone imprint for a while. It looks like Dark Horse is now getting their hands on them. So, essential reading for any fan of just the medium of comics and the history of comics. On the next page, Astro Boy Omnibus Volume 1. I know from, having married into a Japanese family, Astro Boy, of course, is huge in Japan. I've never actually read an Astro Boy comic, though. Have you, Mert?
I can't say that I have, but I'm aware of the enormous impact that the character has had historically. Talking of collections that have a great bearing on the history of comics. I mean, Osamu Tezuka is known over in Japan as the god of comics.
And they say here he's also known as, quote, Japan's Walt Disney.
True, because he was very strongly influenced by Walt Disney.
So that's quite a designation.
So there you are, $20, and I'm sure that's significantly less at dcbservice.com, for 688 pages.
Yeah, that's a hell of a deal.
Yeah.
I may have to try that out, or at least get it for my kids.
Mm-hmm. It is on my shopping list for the month.
Anything else for Dark Horse?
Well, not from my side. You?
I'm good.
All right, then. Moving on to the ever-turbulent waters of the DC section.
All right, right off the bat, we have Cyborg #1, written by David Walker, art and cover by. I'm sorry, I always forget how to pronounce his name.
Let me give it a try.
Yeah.
Ivan Reis.
Yes. Variant cover by the great Tony Harris. Now, is this Cyborg's first ongoing in the character's history?
His first ever. I think it's the first Cyborg #1 that there's ever been. In fact,
I mean, he was in Teen Titans Spotlight. I imagine they showcased him at some point back in the 80s.
They did, but there's never been a Cyborg miniseries per se or a Cyborg ongoing. So this is the first Cyborg #1 there's ever been.
Now, here's a question, because as we go through the DC section, and turbulent is a good word to use, because they're starting. We talked about how last month, which means in June coming up, they're going to be launching all these new #1s and maintaining New 52 numbers for a couple of their titles. But do you feel that this, based on what we're seeing here, is this a new universe, or are they folding this into New 52, or?
I'm pretty sure DC continuity continues uninterrupted through Convergence. I think the upshot of that, if anything, is going to be that one of these obsolete continuities they're focusing on in that series is going to be thrust into the New 52 multiverse.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't think they're going to do any kind of hard or soft reboot as a result of that.
Okay. Because, some books, like Green Arrow's maintaining its numbering, but then other character, Flash is maintaining its numbering. Then other book, like Dr. Fate, there's a new book, Prez, all these different titles we've been talking about in the previous month. So, I mean, a lot of these I'm going to definitely try. Like, for example, one of our future book of the month is Omega Men. And again, that's by Tom King, who is a favorite writer of mine and a friend and fan of our show. And hopefully we can get him on to talk about Omega Men as well, because he's doing wonderful work with Tim Seeley on Grayson, which is a book that I'm glad to see DC is maintaining, because it's in the previews here. It's
had no stronger champion than you, sir.
Well, it's a magnificent espionage book. I got a comment just on page 106. I love the fact that DC is giving Garth Ennis and John McCrea the chance to return to their classic Hitman supporting characters, the Six-Pack. He's part of the Section 8 superhero team. Tremendous.
Yes,
so.
And I see that Garth Ennis is taking another chance to take a big fat dump right on the head of Green Lantern. It's a character that he has said in the past represents to him, the pointlessness and inanity of the superhero genre as he sees it. And he says that if any point in his future he lies through the gritted teeth of a forced smile about how fascinating he's always found the Green Lantern character and how he's always wanted to put his own stamp on him, that's the time to put a bullet through his head. Garth Ennis has always disliked Green Lantern. And so
I love Ennis. He's one of my all-time favorite comic book scribes. I don't share his opinion on Green Lantern, but what I do enjoy is how wonderfully he lampoons our beloved long underwear characters. And in fact, when I think back to the classic Hitman series, which I highly recommend to anyone who's interested in Ennis as a writer, and also just at a book that just approaches the DC universe from a very sort of askew perspective, but also with a real heart to it, Hitman is the book. And I remember in the Hitman book is when Kyle Rayner was the Green Lantern, and they definitely had their way with him in that series. So you've read Hitman, right, Mert?
I have, and I own that very issue. And I read Garth Ennis's thoughts on that issue in Wizard Magazine at the time, and that's how I know how he feels about Green Lantern as a concept.
I just remember Six-Pack sticking Kyle Rayner with the barbell. It's good stuff. What is just your general sense of DC right now as we go through? Because I don't think we need to talk about all these different books. We talked about a lot of them last time.
Yeah, there aren't that many new things going on, but I think that I actually think there are some signs of improvement. Truth to tell.
Well, I'm looking forward to trying out a lot of these number ones. I've talked on the air, and some of our comrades have as well. So we're not that thrilled with the New 52 at this point. So I'm interested to see what they're going to do going forward. And we'll talk more about Convergence, of course, when we're going to do a whole episode on that whole thing down the road. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that, as well as Shane's and Pants, if he's been able to read those.
Well, I'm hard at work at compiling those thoughts, Chris.
Yeah, I'm doing the same. But we'll save our thoughts for that later, because I will say this as a retailer. I cannot wait for Convergence to be over, because basically my Diamond Bill, for several weeks in a row, it's like DC's dumping their entire stable of titles in one shot. from one week to the next, and I can do without that expense. So I'll be happy when it's over.
Oh, normality is just around the corner, Chris.
Yep.
We're already halfway through the second issues.
Indeed.
Of all those miniseries.
This I found very interesting. On page 139, I've never read this story, but I've heard about it. A Tale of the Children's Crusade hardcover, which is a 2-issue miniseries by Neil Gaiman, with co-writers Elisa Whitney and the great Jamie Delano. Have you read this, Bird?
It was coming out in the early 90s, and the comic shop I frequented in those days didn't sell
they wouldn't sell Vertigo to
titles to
underage
minors.
people, right?
That is correct. So, and
Yeah,
I never
okay.
did get a chance to, I didn't get a chance to pick it up off the rack, as it were, and then I never went back and picked up any of the back issues either, because, I didn't really know much of anything about Vertigo series or concepts at that time, and wasn't that interested, even if I had been allowed to purchase Vertigo series. So, short answer is no.
Okay, well, this story features the Dead Boy Detectives, who we just talked about in our last Salmon Book of the Month discussion. And also it's going to feature Tim Hunter, who is basically Harry Potter, from the Books of Magic. So this is something I definitely want to pick up. And there's a new chapter written by Dead Boy Detectives novelist Toby Litt, which I guess acts as a bridge between the 2 original issues. So, it's Gaiman. I mean, that's enough for me.
Yep, that should sell it, indeed.
Yeah.
And if they come out with it in a paperback edition, maybe I'll go along with it too, if only to
Indeed.
pick up the never-before-seen middle chapter.
Yeah. Let's see. I want to jump back to one thing, actually, in the DCU section.
Oh,
I
feel
should have
free.
mentioned it earlier.
I've got a bunch of jumping back to do myself.
Good. I saw this looked interesting. As soon as I find the page, forgive me. Is it Gods and Monsters?
Yes,
yeah.
yes, which is related to a video game, I believe.
Yeah.
No, it's a
movie.
animated movie.
So, prequel to the DC Universe movie Justice League Gods and Monsters. So, one features Kirk Langstrom, Man-Bat, who's been transformed into a blood-sucking creature of the night. And then that's Batman number 1. Then Justice League Gods and Monsters Superman number 1. He's seen abuse and injustice his whole life, and now he's ready to let the world know what happens when a Man of Steel gets angry. And what's encouraging here, these are written by J.M. DeMatteis and Bruce Timm. So I'm going to give these a try just because those writers are involved. And the great Moritat is the artist on the Superman one. Matthew Dow Smith is the artist on Batman. So these sound interesting.
Yeah, covers by friends of ours, Francesco Francavilla on the Batman one-shot, and Gabriel Hardman is the cover of the other one.
Indeed. Where did you want to jump back, sir?
Well, let's see. Since we've been speaking of convergence, something that seems to be spinning out of it in some way is Justice League United number 11 on page 85. Jeff Parker's been writing that series, and I've actually, this is probably the Justice League series that I would call the best these days. I enjoyed the Infinitus saga he did, teaming the JLU with the Legion of Superheroes, and now he's giving us quote, wildly untraditional teams of heroes and villains who are being proactive about these constant cosmic events and are setting out to try and prevent the next one from happening before it starts. And we have a team-up of Mera, Aquaman's wife, Poison Ivy, Swamp Thing, and the Demon Etrigan. I love strange character combos.
Now, in this series, are they changing the roster of the team routinely?
It has been a little bit unstable.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, this is the team that's headquartered up in Canada.
Right, I knew that.
Yep, it's the one with the little red maple leaf hidden in the logo.
And the previous page, Justice League 42, talking about the Darkseid War.
Yep, that is a clash between Darkseid and the Anti-Monitor.
And I know you and Peter were talking about this. I'm still listening to your latest wonderful Crisis tapes recording, but I know you'd mentioned this. Where is that story starting?
It's the issue that most recently came out, which I believe was number 40. And that came out just like 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is Jeff Johns. I'm going to want to give this a try.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's a good prologue issue because it doesn't have much to do with the Justice League themselves. The whole thing is from the point of view of Metron, of the New Gods. Mm-hmm. It acknowledges the fact that there have been one crisis too many in the DC universe, which is a sentiment with which many fans would have no difficulty agreeing. And Johns has decided to make this a problem within the DC universe itself. And the Anti-Monitor is going to be one of the major players in this new story, and he's given some hints that there's more to the Anti-Monitor's origin than we have so far seen, and that he has a direct connection to Metron and to Metron's favorite mode of conveyance, the Mobius chair.
That's an interesting concept. So you read the prologue and you enjoyed it?
Yes. I'm not sure I'm going to entirely like what Johns has in mind for expanding the Anti-Monitor's background, but I'm definitely going to be reading the story all the same.
All right. That's enough for me. What else in DC, sir?
What else in DC, indeed? Well, as you said, there's no need for us to jump on all of these things, since a lot of them are number 2 issues, and we try to focus mostly on the new and different when we run down the DC, or the previews guides in general. I know there was something else here. Let's see. Batman 66, number 25, on page 119, introduces a 1966 version of Harley Quinn.
Huh.
So if you're a fan of that character, and we know several people who are, check that out. Page 120 gives us an annual for the Gotham by Midnight series, which I have enjoyed quite a bit. And it's got the Midnight Shift, as they're called, kind of a special paranormal investigation wing of the GCPD, going up against the Gentleman Ghost.
Oh.
Classic DC character.
Yes, he is.
So I will definitely be picking that one up. And on
Was he an adversary of both Batman and Hawkman?
At different times, yes. And even the Golden Age Flash. In fact, I think that's who he faced in his first appearance, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow, okay.
And then on page 122, speaking of Harley Quinn, a couple of Harley Quinn things here. The second issue of the Harley Quinn Power Girl series by Amanda Conner, Jimmy Palmiotti, and Stéphane Roux, which features the 70s Superman supporting character Vartox. And in Harley Quinn 18, speaking of 70s Superman supporting characters, the return of Captain Strong. You familiar with Captain Strong, Chris?
I know you've talked about it. It looks like a riff on Popeye.
That's exactly what he was meant to be when he came into being all those years ago. I don't know how many people even remember that he was supposed to be a Popeye doppelganger, but that's definitely what he was. And he gained his powers not by eating spinach, but by eating enchanted seaweed called Samcha. And here he is ripping Harley out of the ground. And I'll tell you what, if it weren't $3.99 for a 32-page issue, I would be all over that. So yeah, I'll definitely grab that on the cheap later on. Page 129, we've got Scooby-Doo Team-Up number 11. That series continues to impress. It's on a bi-monthly schedule, brought to us by Shali Fish, the art and cover by Dario Brizuela, who's been the artist on the series all along, as the Scooby Gang's kind of graduated from teaming up with DC superheroes and are now meeting up with different Hanna-Barbera characters.
Indeed.
This time it's Secret Squirrel.
Secret Squirrel.
You just know Morocco Mole's going to be in there, too. Has to be.
Page 133, DC's done a series of celebration of 75 years for certain characters. They've done Superman, Batman, Lois Lane. I think they've done the Joker. And now they have one for Green Lantern. It looks like it covers his entire career from the Golden Age, G.L. Alan Scott, through Hal Jordan, Green Lantern Corps. They have work by John Broome, Denny O'Neil, Jeff Johns, art by Martin O'Dell, Gil Kane, Neil Adams. That's probably going to be a nice collection.
Yep, covering a lot of ground, a lot of different characters, a lot of different storytelling styles.
And reasonably priced. It's 400 pages for $40, so that's really not bad for
a hardcover. Yeah,
a hardcover like that, yeah. Those collections are very good. We usually have them in the store.
Yeah, price to move. I hope you're going to have the Shazam one.
Oh, yeah. Did they solicit that one already?
I think they did, actually.
Yeah, I hope I ordered it. I'm glad you mentioned that. I'll have to double check.
Well, while we're on these pages here, page 132, there's also a trade of that Gotham by Midnight series that I mentioned. So I do strongly recommend that. It's a different take on Batman's world. Batman is present, but only peripherally, and Jim Corrigan, a.k.a. the Spectre, is a regular cast member.
And ladies and gentlemen, an Adam Murdo recommendation can be taken to the bank. That's what I have to say about that.
Chris, you're writing cash checks on that bank that I'm not sure I'll be able to cash.
Anything else in the DC area?
I don't believe so, sir. How about you?
No, because like you said, a lot of it is these number twos of number ones we've already really discussed. When those haven't come out yet, so we really can't talk about them yet because we have to wait and see how they do once they debut. Although I'm interested looking at there's a lot of new action figures, and I think about if Shane and Pants were with us. I'm definitely interested to know what they thought of, like this, for example, this new Mr. Miracle figure or this new Dead Man or they have a beautiful on page 153 Superman the Man of Steel statue based on Darwin Cook's art from New Frontier, which looks gorgeous. But
and there's a black and white Harley Quinn statue, which
yes.
we are told is based on the original design for the character by Paul Dini.
Wow.
That's what she was supposed to look
looks like a member of the Royal Flush Gang in a way.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah. Page 154, some other, again, not my cup of tea anymore, but some really nice figures. Blue Beetle, the raised Blue Beetle, Lex Luthor in one of his classic armored suits, Black Adam, the Flash. If Shane still bought figures, I'm sure he'd be salivating. So, may I move on to page 159 in IDW, sir?
All right, into IDW we go.
And this is our first off-the-rack pick. Star Trek Green Lantern. Number 1 of 6, writer Mike Johnson, artist Angel Hernandez, and the Star Trek crew being used is the new crew, the versions of from the new films, and they're going to encounter the Green Lantern Corps. So I'm really looking forward to reading this. I love the recent Star Trek Planet of the Apes crossover they did, and I hope this one is of the same quality, if not even better. So we should mention to our listeners that we decided not to pick any Marvel or DC books this month just because DC's a lot of these number 2s, and Marvel, as we're going to discuss, is just all about Secret Wars. So,
but if you're looking for a fix of the big 2, this is where you'll get it, because this
yes.
is at least half of a big 2 book. This is DC and IDW's licensed Star Trek property.
And when you think about it, this is such an obvious crossover. So I'm looking forward to giving it a try.
Yes, and because it's the Spectrum War, you can be sure that the Green Lantern Corps is not the only corps that the crew of the Enterprise will be meeting.
Good point, Mert.
Yeah,
good point.
Could get awfully crowded before this party is over. But yes, that is going to be our one of our independent, / DC picks for Off the Racks this month. And at dcbservice.com, it is 50% off. Oh, and to throw back to our earlier mention of the Astro Boy Omnibus, I've just discovered that too is 50% off at dcbservice.com. So that's $9.99 for all those pages of classic, seminal manga.
Terrific. On page 167, The Shrinking Man. Richard Matheson's exploration. Richard Matheson, of course, wrote I Am Legend, which was later made into the film Omega Man, and then remade again with first Charlton Heston and then with Will Smith. Richard Matheson's exploration of shrinking manhood is brought to vivid life in this comic book adaptation. Scott Carey, reducing 1/7 of an inch per day, faces tension big and small as his body continues to shrink away.
Horrifying.
I love the cover. It has a great EC feel to it.
Pretty extended quotation, which I assume is taken directly from either the story or the film.
Indeed.
Right there
and Murd, I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
But this is EC alternate cover month at IDW.
Ah, yes.
So, like most of their major releases, not all but most, will have an EC-inspired variant cover.
Fine by me.
Yep.
For example, looking at this is up your alley, page 171, Thunder Agent's 50th Anniversary Special.
Oh, yes, indeed. 64 pages, $7.99. Some rarities that I guess could only be found in the old single issues from Tower Comics and that weren't included in IDW's archive editions. So it's something for the Thunder Agents completist.
You going to pick this up?
Actually, I think I'm going to skip it.
Okay.
I'm finding a lot of the individual issues in back issue bins here and there, so I'm pretty close to having a complete run of that stuff, actually. And whatever I don't have that way, I have in the archive editions I just mentioned. So
you can find a lot of Thunder Agents issues. They're not that expensive. This is a great collection, though. Wally Wood, Dan Atkins, the late great Dan Atkins, was a friend of the show and came out of Reading.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Ditko, Gary Leach, George Tuska, George Perez, Cockrum, Dave Sim. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so it's not strictly Golden Age material. There's some stuff, probably from the early 80s Deluxe Comics run, which attracted some really primo talent. Too bad it only lasted like 5 issues.
Yeah. I might get a couple of these for the wall, just out of respect. I'm looking at these EC covers are great as I go through these pages. They really did a nice job on them.
Heck,
I
even
mean, a lot of these books I don't read, but these covers are fabulous.
the Ghostbusters cover is pretty great.
Which page is that on?
That's on page 176.
Oh, wow. That is fabulous. Wow. Great stuff. Now, looking at the cover. Oh, okay. This is the concept where the movie Ghostbusters meet the cartoon Ghostbusters, right?
Right.
Okay, that's interesting. All right.
Or where the comics Ghostbusters meet the...
Yeah.
Anyway.
Because I remember when I was in the 80s, they had to call it the real Ghostbusters cartoon because there was also another Ghostbusters cartoon that really wasn't the characters we know and love.
Right. That was the Filmation version, a little bit off-brand.
Yeah. I don't know what licensing issues were going on there, but...
Well, IDW did publish... Well, not IDW. Tomorrow's Publications published a book on the subject. It was kind of like Lou Scheimer. Lou Scheimer was one of the founders of Filmation Animation Studio, and he did an autobiography. And there was a pretty lengthy chapter dedicated to that cartoon, their version of Ghostbusters versus the real Ghostbusters.
I think you have that Filmation book on the table in the studio.
I no longer do because I've taken it home.
Oh,
so hopefully sometime I'll actually get around to reading it.
Well, again, I've never read anything by Tomorrows that didn't completely blow me over. Just what a great company, so vital to chronicling the history of comics. I got to jump ahead here, just especially because of recent events. Page 188, 189. Herb Trimpe's The Incredible Hulk, Artist Edition. Now, as we know, Herb Trimpe just passed just a few weeks ago. And always an artist I've always loved. I was first introduced to his work when I picked up G.I. Joe. Shane would probably say the same thing. In the 80s, he did Transformers. And, of course, as I became more familiar with comics history, and especially Marvel history, you know, his Hulk work, Ant-Man, Phantom Eagle, so forth. And, of course, Pants, I'm sure, would be salivating right now if he was here with us. But they're doing an artist edition of Trimpe's Hulk work. And this is pointed because I'm sure Trimpe participated in this probably before he passed. Features more than 5 complete stories by Trimpe and an incredible cover gallery. Oh, I have to get this immediately.
Well, again, out of respect.
Yeah, it's great stuff. Let's see here.
Well, while you're looking, I wanted to jump back to page 162 and 3.
Sure.
This is something that IDW is really rolling out big this month, and I'm kind of excited about it. Godzilla in Hell, issue number 1 of 5, and there's an EC variant to that, too. Godzilla versus King Ghidorah in Hell. And it's a 5-issue miniseries. Each issue will be a different creative team. I think it's a different writer/artist in each issue, or at least this first issue is that way, and I know at least one other is going to be by a single person writing and drawing the whole thing. But 5 different visions of what Godzilla would go through in the eternal torment of the afterlife. If Godzilla temporarily dies and finds himself consigned to hell, and what kind of kaiju craziness can he get up to down there? So the first issue is by James Stokoe, who did the Godzilla Half-Century War, which was a 5-issue miniseries. It was like a 50th anniversary thing showing Godzilla his duel with one monster hunter in the course of 5 different decades. So now here he is bringing his very detailed artwork. He did the cover on page 162, which looks great. Yeah. He also does an indie book called Orkstain. So he's doing the first issue, and our friend Dave Wachter, I think he's going to be doing the 5th issue. He was telling me about it at the London convention this past March. I'm not going to reveal anything he said to me. He swore me to secrecy, but from what he told me, that is going to be outstanding as well. So yes, definitely going to get all 5 issues of this.
Anything Dave Wachter, I mean, his art is so magnificent. And I want to comment, we had him as a guest at the last Super Show we did back in 2013. He graciously drew for me this magnificent Thanos sketch with him wearing the gauntlet with the gems. It's hanging with pride in my shop, but what a talent he is. We're jumping ahead to 195, page Punky Brewster Volume 1. Did you see this?
All right. Yeah, I was going to bring this up because I was talking at your recent Free Comic Book Day event, Chris, at Wild Pig Comics at 14 South Michigan Avenue in Kenilworth, New Jersey, with our friend Jason. He and his wife Sarah have been coming to a lot of our events recently. They were part of the Jamie's Avengers charity 10K run.
They sure were.
And we were talking about a couple of things in this month's previews, and this was one thing that Jason brought up, that there's now a... This seems to be something that IDW is... Jason wondered aloud if this was a coming thing for independent publishers to grab and just do graphic novels or like original comics collections of comics based on old 80s TV properties, like Miami Vice here on the same page, Saved by the Bell in last month's catalog. And Jason, I think it's really more of an IDW thing than a publishing trend as a whole. Like maybe IDW has some kind of arrangement with NBC Universal or something to adapt a lot of their old properties into comics. I don't know. But Punky Brewster is one of the last 80s series I would have expected to see made into a comic in 2015. And I told Jason if this Punky Brewster thing turned out to be based on the animated series, with Punky and her magical little furry friend Glomer having adventures, I would probably buy that because I watched and loved that on NBC Saturday morning. But if it's based on just your basic live-action Punky Brewster show, I probably would not.
My God, I forgot there was an animated series.
There was indeed,
Holy
Chris.
mackerel. Yeah. All right. Do you have anything else for IDW, sir?
I always like to give a shout-out to Weird Love whenever a new issue of that shows up.
Ah, yes.
And that's on page 194, issue number 8.
An especially creepy story of clown love.
Clown love.
How can you go wrong with that?
Yeah. Oh, and on page 187, there's a trade paperback I wanted to highlight for folks. The October Faction, written by Steve Niles, who is kind of a specialist in horror, and art by Damian Worm, who is definitely a specialist in horror, and who has collaborated with Steve Niles in the past. It's this very dark, gothic, gruesome kind of story about a family of monster hunters. It's kind of like the Van Helsing. If the Addams family counted Van Helsing and his descendants as members of their family, that's kind of what the October Faction turns out to be. It has kind of an offbeat sense of humor to it, but it's also very dark and Poe-esque, shall we say. So yeah, I've bought the first couple of issues. I saw you had a couple of issues on the shelf at your Free Comic Book Day event, Chris, and I would have picked them up, but I wasn't sure which ones I needed. But if I just bought this trade, which collects the first 6 issues, I wouldn't have to worry about it. So I
always love good yarns about Monster Hunter, so I may pick that up myself.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's Monster Hunter and Dysfunctional Family all in one.
Moving on to Image?
Moving on to Image.
All right, now here's our second off-the-rack pick. We Stand on Guard. All I need to know is it's Brian K. Vaughan as the scripter, so I'm in immediately. And it's Scroce, right? Steve Scroce? How you pronounce his name?
I really don't know how you pronounce that, Chris. I've always said Scroce, but I've been wrong about these things before.
And I'll be happy to put a quarter in the mispronunciation jar if I'm on that boat. But
and I will do the same if it turns out I'm wrong. This sounds like a question for Eric Nolan Withington, actually, of Tomorrow's Publications. He's usually the one we turn to when we're not sure if we're pronouncing a creator's name right.
I'm counting on it. Now, 100 years from now, a heroic band of Canadian civilians must defend their homeland from invasion by the United States of America.
Giant robots from the United States of America.
The hyper-detailed combat between badass freedom fighters and giant, then they edit out the curse word, robots, begins with a spectacular 40-page first issue for just $2.99.
And if you go to DCBService.com, you'll get it for half that, actually. It's 50% off.
And again, it's the art looks tremendous. They have a couple sample pages here, and it's Brian K. Vaughan. I mean, this is just another example of how he just can tackle basically any genre. I mean, think about Saga, which we've talked about many times. Think about Ex Machina. Think about Runaways. Think about Why the Last Man. Think about his Batman work. I mean, this is. I know this is going to be great. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yep. Looking at the preview pages, it looks like he even managed to work a weird animal sidekick into this story. So
that's right.
All the better.
Indeed.
Yeah. What a concept, too. It sounds like something that Brian Wood would have come up with.
Yes.
It's kind of like a more extreme version of DMZ and from the mind of Vaughn.
Now, as always, Image has a whole series of new number ones.
Look on page
Which
202.
which ones jumped out in particular to you, Mert?
Okay, I'm going to start with Island, number 1, on page 202. That's Brandon Graham. Well, he's one of a few contributors to this issue because it's going to be an anthology series, apparently, with some really off-the-wall kind of sci-fi fantasy stories. Let's see. So we've got Emma Rios and someone called Ludrow contributing to this first one. It's $7.99, but it's 112 pages, and it's like an oversized magazine format, which Brandon Graham seems to prefer. Some of the things he's done in the past have been like that, like his multiple warheads. So I really love his wonky art style. It's kind of, I don't know, so part Dr. Seuss, part Jeff Darrow, and part lots of other stuff. So yeah, I would... if you're kind of got an Indie Jones going, I'd recommend trying that.
And look on page 204, The Crooked Man hardcover. An expatriate returns to San Francisco to take revenge on a former comrade in arms. Their battle of wills plays out against the apocalyptic mayhem of the 1906 earthquake. The art is gorgeous in this. There's some sample pages. Gabriel Hardman and Corinna Betchko
his wife
are doing this. Okay, and then the art is by Gabriel Hardman and Elizabeth Breitweiser. Yeah. This looks tremendous. I mean, visually, this looks amazing. I love the concept. I think I'm going to get this.
Well, it is another historic, early 20th century period piece for you, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, look at the lettering on the top of that first page.
Yeah. Now this looks right up my alley. So that's on page 204, 205.
Oh my! And then on page 208, we have a new Bloodstrike number 1.
I was waiting for you to bring it up.
By Rob Liefeld, art and story, and the cover by Dan Fraga, a name that I haven't heard very often over the past 20 years or so. So
boy, that is a dedication to 90s style if I've ever seen one.
Well, Liefeld knows who he is, and he sticks with it.
If our glorious founder Deemer were here, he'd be now excoriating the fact that Rob Liefeld still has a place in comic books. But
yep. But reminding us what a nice guy
who is at conventions. Yes,
seems to be. Yes,
to be balanced. But
we're promised that this is going to be, quote, a more mature side to Liefeld than fans have previously experienced. And there's going to be a character named Tragedy Ann in it. I love the name. I don't know what kind of character is going to be attached to it, but I love the name.
I'll be passing, but anyway.
Yeah, so will I. But
I wonder if Shane would be interested on page 211, J. Scott Campbell Time Capsule hardcover. It's like a retrospective on his career from 1994 to 2004. Richard Starking spent Election Day with fan-favorite artist J. Scott Campbell in 2004, talking about Scott's first 10 years in comics, richly illustrated with black and white art from Campbell's files. The conversation covers Gen 13, Danger Girl, Wildsiders, and so forth. So this is something I think Shane might be interested in.
Might be. You know what, a big fan of Danger Girl he was.
Yeah.
And Campbell in general, I think. And then as we get to the back of the Image solicitations, we find that Image has opted for a different format. We are now not given any kind of descriptive text for anything that's not a first issue or a spotlight of some kind. If it's just a everyday ongoing issue of a monthly series, it's all you get is creative team, title, number, cover-ish, image, nothing else.
Oh, like on page 220, 221, for example.
Exactly.
Yeah.
From there on. So those of us who are deciding whether or not to buy a certain series from issue to issue based on what happens in that issue are not given a whole lot to go on. But, okay, Image, your loss.
On page 223, I know I've been hearing good things about Bitch Planet, and they have Volume 1 as a trade. Chrononauts Volume 1, we'll be talking about that shortly.
Very soon.
Yeah. Some of the books they already did give, like they have the J. Scott Campbell book mentioned again. So they are highlighting some of them, but you're right. Most of the ongoing books, they're just getting just the basic creator credits and an image. No pun intended. So, but again, I give full props to Image. I just think the company's doing so many dynamic things, such diversity in their output. To me, this company's at the peak of their powers. And I think it's finally fully realized what the company, I think, always was intending to be.
Yep. Nobody else is doing as much as they are to showcase a huge diversity of content across a great range of genres, and they probably come the closest right now of any publisher in business of showing the full scope of what comics as a medium are capable of.
I couldn't agree more, and I think that's something comics never can get enough of. So the more diverse it is, the more that you can draw in, a wider variety of readers. Now, Mert, I should say though, on the subsequent pages, they do then highlight some of the stuff that was only given a brief blurb prior to that. Some of it,
right? Well, these are the collected editions and trade paperbacks and hardcovers and such. You're going to ask people to pay, $9, $10, $20, $30, $40 for these things. They really ought to give them at least a little bit of a description. I see on page 241 that they're giving a second chance to Rick Remender's The Last Days of American Crime.
I have not read that, but I intend to because I really like Remender's work and I love crime noir. Yeah. So
it's an interesting concept. What happens in the United States shortly before they activate a behavior modification program that renders every citizen of the U.S. Incapable of committing a crime? It acts on their brains and it implants a kind of post-hypnotic suggestion that prevents them from committing crime. So this is what criminals in the U.S. do while they still can. It was originally published through disreputable publisher Radical Comics.
Did you read it?
No, but
okay.
I did. I think we spoke to Rick Remender himself about it at some point.
Well, I'll be giving that a shot.
Oh, please do.
You ready for Marvel?
Yeah, let's bring it on.
Well, I think this will be one of the quickest Marvel discussions we've ever had because...
Yeah, so much of it is just issue number 2 of Secret Wars tie-in X.
And I was telling you before we went on the air, I got to admit, as I read page through this, and because Secret Wars only just started, issue 1 came out last week.
Yeah, this is real time, not in previews time.
Right. As we're recording this, issue 2 will be out tomorrow. But, and we'll talk more about Secret Wars when we review it down the road. But, I got to tell you, as I go through this just because they're doing a whole battle world concept. This just feels like what's going on with Convergence.
It's pretty much exactly what's going on with Convergence.
And I got to tell you, I find that enormously dismaying. Now I don't know who copied who, or but really, I don't know. I just one more reason why I'm reading a lot more of other publishers than as much as I love Marvel and DC characters. This is. First of all, this is an overwhelming amount of tie-ins. There's no way I can possibly going to be able to read all these, or even carry them all in my shop.
Yeah, I haven't counted them all, but I think there have to be at least as many as the 40 that DC cranked out.
So, I don't know. I mean, definitely sticking with the Secret Wars, the main series, but I'm not going to be reading all of these various because they're bringing in, like they have the Old Man Logan world, they've got Extinction Agenda, they've got Age of Apocalypse, the Marvel Monsters, I mean, Armor Wars, X-Men from the 90s.
A couple of them are pretty tempting, I have to say.
No, there's some interesting concepts, but I don't know, I just...
Squadron Sinister versus Frightful 4 on page 49? That's...
With Carlos Pacheco art, which is great. So, the Korvac saga... There's a lot of stuff going on here. Secret Wars 2099, Inferno.
Spider Island is starting up this month.
Yeah. So, let's go to something I am excited about. On page 78, Star Wars Lando #1.
All right, that is definitely noteworthy.
Yes, Charles Soule writing, Alex Malev art. And it's just chronicling an adventure of Lando Calrissian before we meet him in Empire Strikes Back. And Lando made his way in the galaxy getting by on some swindle, some swagger, and a smile. Lobot at his side, Lando has a plan to steal a very valuable ship, but has he bitten off more than he can chew? I'm in all the way. Every Marvel Star Wars book thus far I've loved thoroughly. So I haven't read The Last Padawan, but I've read all the others, and I'm following them, and I think they're tremendous. If we go to page 80... Star Wars 7, again, Jason Aaron, the great Jason Aaron, still scripting. We have one shot about Obi-Wan on Tatooine before he, meets the grown-up Luke. That looks very interesting. And that's a one shot with, is it Simone Bianchi?
I think it's Simone, actually.
Okay, doing the art there. And then issue 8 continues the main story where they're bringing in the great Stuart Immonen as penciler. So very excited about that. Page 87. Looks like they're letting Wade finish his Daredevil run without really Secret Wars getting involved in it, which I'm glad they're doing that.
Yes, I'm thankful for that as well.
Yeah, it's the penultimate chapter. They still have Matt in this wacky red suit that he's wearing now.
Oh.
Like a literal suit.
He's actually wearing a suit that looks like that. I just assumed that he was standing under a red light here, and that's what was creating
he's
that
wearing
effect.
that.
Wow.
So it's this Mark Waid's run on Daredevil. Any fan of Daredevil, and I'm speaking as a lifelong fan, almost lifelong fan of the character, Waid's run has been so thoroughly enjoyable, perfectly blending both the sort of the grittier, Miller, Bendis, Brubaker eras with more of some more Silver Age swashbuckling feel. It's outstanding, and I'm sorry to see Waid leaving, but I'm sure he'll go out with a bang. And again, I should remind our listeners that we will be returning to our Daredevil spotlights. We're hoping to record some near the end of the month, and hopefully at that time we'll be able to discuss in much more detail the absolutely magnificent Daredevil Netflix series.
Yep.
So,
and I can attest to its magnificence firsthand now, since thanks to you, I've seen the first 2 episodes.
Indeed.
Phenomenal stuff. Probably, I don't know. I'm still very fond of The Flash, but this may be, for its faithfulness to its source material, like the best small screen adaptation of comics ever made.
Well, I haven't. I'm only through episode 7 at this point, and so far I definitely agree with that. Page 95. It's always good to see Jerry Conway writing Spider-Man. He's been doing these point 1 issues, which I have not yet read, but it's Conway, so something I definitely will read. Honestly, for Marvel, I'm ready to go to trades unless you have other individual floppies you want to discuss.
Well, just a shout-out for the Ant-Man Annual coming out this month on page 89. It's written by Nick Spencer, so it's a thing of quality. I've actually peeked at a couple of issues of that series on the shelves. It's the $3.99 price point that's kept me away, but he's used the minor supervillain, the Grizzly, as a supporting character. I think that we had Ant-Man and, this Ant-Man and the Grizzly versus Crossfire a little while ago. If you enjoyed his superior foes of Spider-Man, Ant-Man is kind of the next place to go to get the same kind of feel. But this annual, just in time for the Ant-Man movie, and the solicitation notes that there's no accident involved there at all. It's a team-up between Hank Pym, who hopefully won't be drawn to look too much like Michael Douglas, and Scott Lang, going up against a classic villain, and there will be a new hero introduced. So, could be fun there. And also a little bit of love to another series that I've sort of sniffed around on the racks but haven't actually bought. Dennis Hopeless's current Spider-Woman series, which is using Ben Urich and the current wearer of the Mantle of the Porcupine as supporting characters. Gotta love that. So, which is also, Javier Rodriguez is doing the artwork there. So if you like Superior Foes of Spider-Man, try either Nick Spencer's Ant-Man or Dennis Hopeless's Spider-Woman. If you feel like paying the $4, I doubt you'll be too disappointed. And those are things that I would definitely scoop out of back issue bins at some later time. Oh, and also, I'm also excited about Lando.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Lobot is going to be a supporting character, so hopefully someone is actually going to give him some dialogue. We'll see what kind of a personality he has.
Instead of him just sort of pursing his lips and whispering instructions.
And the thing on his head blinking.
Yes.
Now then, Chris, go ahead to trades.
Yes, Star Wars Volume 1 on page 106. Collecting the first 6 issues of what I consider so far the magnificent Jason Aaron, John Cassaday Star Wars flag title for Marvel. As most listeners know, Marvel has because they're now owned by Disney, which now also owns Star Wars, they've regained the license for Star Wars comics, and so far they've been outstanding. Page 108. Volume 2 of the Busiek-Perez Avengers run, the Omnibus. This is one of the greatest periods in the Avengers history. Consistently outstanding, their entire run. and certainly deserves the omnibus treatment.
First volume of this run was offered as a raffle prize at your last Wild Pig sale, was it not?
It sure was. It sure was. Page 111, a Guardians of the Galaxy solo classic omnibus. So a wide variety of creators who've all worked on the Guardians characters. I'm assuming both the ones from, were they from the year 3000, Merd? I forgot what.
Actually, I think these are just early appearances of the characters who make up the current incarnation.
Oh, okay, so they're milking the film. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. The ones who are familiar to moviegoers. So if you have like a youngster in your lives, like maybe a 12-year-old at home who is all about the Guardians of the Galaxy but doesn't know anything about the comic book roots of the characters, take them to school, buy them a copy of this beautiful volume. Look at that Alex Ross cover there. Show them what these characters were in the 60s and 70s, and in Groot's case, I think maybe even the 50s, because we do
wasn't Groot originally based on an Atlas monster?
Well, yeah, Groot was an Atlas monster, in fact. Groot from Planet X. Yeah, and he could speak. He could speak English too. There was more to him than just "I am Groot" over and over again. And there's Drax in his purple Starlin costume with the skull-shaped jewelry.
Gamora and her netting,
and also skull-shaped jewelry.
Yeah.
And you've got the original Star-Lord and Rocket Raccoon, who's probably the one who had to be changed the least to be adapted to the big screen.
From the Bill Mantlo era.
Mm-hmm.
Page 117, we did a review on Off the Rack of Unbeatable Squirrel Girl issue 1, which I think we all enjoyed. And this is issues 1 through 4 collected in trade. So it also features her debut, you've mentioned this, Murder, Marvel Superheroes number 8 from 1990 by Steve Ditko. So
just for good measure.
I'm going to jump ahead to two things that I'm very excited about. Page 122. This is a run that I think deserves a lot more attention. Roger Stern's run on Doctor Strange from the 1980s. This collects issues 75 to 81. This is seek out. You can find a lot of these back issues are not that expensive. Seek out these stories. Roger Stern did a wonderful run on Doctor Strange from the 80s, which I highly recommend, including I think it was Stern into the classic Dracula Montesi formula stories too. Great stuff. Are you familiar with those, Merd?
Well, I'm familiar with the Montesi formula, but I didn't know that Roger Stern had ever written the character.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Now, 123, I've been waiting years for this. Now, no doubt the catalyst is the forthcoming Black Panther appearance in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but they are now reprinting in larger collections the Christopher Priest Black Panther, which I've talked about ad nauseum on the air. We'll be doing a Black Panther spotlight at some point, hopefully this year.
Someday in the misty distance.
Yes. Well, I'm shooting for summer for that, actually. And this collects issues 1 through 17 of the what originally was a Marvel Knight series, and this became a regular Marvel series. This is my favorite comic book series of all time. I have the whole series bound in 2 beautiful hardcovers given to me by my dear friends Ryan and Dan. And to me, this is one of the smartest, most politically savvy superhero comics I've ever read, and plus Priest's knowledge of the Marvel Universe is encyclopedic, and how he folds it into the Black Panther and his world. He even explains how the trippy Kirby 1970s Black Panther can work in the Marvel, which was an amazing feat. It just shows what a great writer Priest is. I can't recommend this series enough, and I'm excited that it's $34.99. It's issues 1 through 17. Marvel has basically wiped this series out of their continuity. Not that their continuity probably means that much at this point, but
too right.
It's great stuff. Well, I'll talk about this in greater length when we do our spotlight on the Black Panther. But if you're interested in the character, or you just want to read a very smart superhero comic, because really it's not about a superhero, it's about a king who people think is a superhero, but really he's a king. And Priest really emphasizes that the Black Panther is a king first, and his political savviness and the intrigue and the espionage, and plus there's a lot of great humor in this.
That's one of Priest's trademarks.
Yes, the character Everett K. Ross, who is the State Department liaison to T'Challa, who is sort of the POV for the everyman. He has great quips. It's a masterpiece. Highest recommendation. I know you've read some of the series yourself, Mert.
I have, and I know just how hard it is to find back issues of this series because I, like you, have been looking.
Well, I have a lot of them in my 50-cent bins. Whenever I see them, I grab them and I throw them in the bins.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of them there. Page 125, a Daredevil Epic Collection. This is where Marvel does these larger reprints of whole arcs. Daredevil 365 to 380, which I think was the end of his first volume. This features art by Gene Colan, his last time he worked on the character. And these are some of the very good Joe Kelly stories. And that he and Carrie Nord did, which you and I both talked about in the past.
Oh, yes. The Kelly Nord and also the Kiesel Nord stories in the mid-'90s. Vastly underrated.
Yes, they are. We'll be giving them their due when we do our next series of Daredevil Spotlights. Page 126. Oh, this is always fun. Power Man and Iron Fist Epic Collection. Volume 1, Power Man 48-49, then Power Man Iron Fist 50 to 70. Fabulous stuff. Immensely fun. It's got that great 70s blaxploitation, kung fu craze vibe to it. Great buddy stuff. Wacky villains, mysticism, Kunlun, the whole 9 yards. Great. I can't. Marvel did two essentials where I think they covered much of the series, but now they're doing it again in color. Highest recommendation. What else at Marvel jumps out at you, Merd?
Well, I did see some pages back a hardcover Marvel Masterworks edition of the early Spider-Woman material.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Where was that? That was on page 110. And, this is Spider-Woman, her first few appearances in Marvel Spotlight, when her hair wasn't even showing through her cowl. Marvel Spotlight number 32, Marvel 2-in-1 number 29 through 33, and the first 8 issues of her first solo series from 1978. All in that very distinctive, hardbound, dust-jacketed Marvel Masterworks format.
Anything else you want to mention in Marvel?
I don't think so.
I wanted to, as we go to the rest of the book, one thing I wanted to focus on immediately was page 269, Archie vs. Sharknado.
This was another thing that Jason brought up at your shop the other day, Chris.
Yeah.
They're up to their 3rd Sharknado TV movie.
Yeah.
And it's gotten so... Its influence is so far-ranging that we've actually had the opportunity to purchase Sharknado Christmas decorations for the Christmas barn. We have declined to do so, but it's better suited for comics than for Christmas, I would say.
Although you probably would have... I don't know if they would have fit into the motif of your store, but I'm sure they would have sold. I watched the first Sharknado with my boys. We were howling because it was such a ludicrous B film, and obviously intentionally so. I love how they've done Archie versus Punisher versus Predator. Now we have Sharknado. You got to give Archie props. They're trying to stay right on the cutting edge.
Oh, yeah. Well, they kind of always have, just absorb, incorporate, appropriate all these trends as they come along. And this one is actually co-written by the guy who directed all 3 of these movies so far, Anthony C. Ferrante, with Archie artist extraordinaire Dan Parent providing the art. An assist from Rich Kozlowski.
I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. Unfortunately, my time is limited. But page 287, this is a book I always praise. It's gone from DC, and now it's under Avatar, which is Garth Ennis's War Stories. This story begins a new arc focusing on the Western theater in World War II and a small group of Irish soldiers who volunteered to fight with the British. And, again, no one does military comics better than Ennis in the modern day. I've yet to be disappointed by anything he's done when it comes to his military comics. Well, so I highly recommend that.
It is the genre to which his heart seems to belong.
Yes, and historically, military history is my passion. So Garth Ennis is someone I wish I could sit down to and just have a conversation with.
Very next page before we jump ahead. Page 288 from Big Wow Art. We have a new trade collection of the original Nocturnals miniseries.
Oh, look at that, yeah.
Originally published through Malibu's Bravura imprint, I believe, back in the 90s. It's written and painted by Dan Brereton, man of many talents. And it's a bunch of, spooky Halloween-type characters who just get together and defend their home city from supernatural threats. beautifully painted stuff, buckets of atmosphere, just good, spooky, creepy, action-oriented fun. I know it was one of Jamie D's favorites as well.
That's right.
So I give it big ups. I picked up the original 6-issue series when it was being published, and I haven't missed a Nocturnals project since then. So this is where it all began. For $24.95 from Big Wow Art, you can try it for yourself.
That will be in Wild Pig.
Very good.
Page 297 from Archaea. This sounded very interesting. Long Walk to Valhalla, original graphic novel. Written by Adam Smith, illustrated by Matthew Fox. There are many things that Rory would like to forget about his childhood growing up in rural Arkansas. Sometimes he'd even like to forget about Joe, his mentally challenged older brother, both his closest friend and biggest problem. But when a young girl named Sylvia shows up, claiming to be a Valkyrie sent by the Norse god Odin to deliver Rory to Valhalla, he'll have to face the past he's tried to lock away. Wow, the art looks fabulous. And this is something I'm definitely going to try. It says, great for fans of blankets. Now, you're not a fan of blankets, Murd.
Not really, no.
Yeah.
Not
Fun Home and I Kill Giants. So,
now, Fun Home I do enjoy.
yeah, I'm definitely going to try that. For Mouse Guard fans, on the next page, The Art of Mouse Guard, 2005 to 2015. I know we have people in the studio who are fans of Mouse Guard.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we've collectively been some of David's biggest supporters over the years.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that Brian Deemer will be grabbing a copy of that.
Indeed.
If it's in his budget. But it is $60, but it's some most beautiful images of epic fantasy mouse protagonists you're ever going to see.
Jumping ahead to page, for Boom, page 302. First time in hardcover, Crimson Volume 1. I remember when this was a big deal in the 90s. I think it was the 90s.
Yeah,
Maybe,
late 90s. Yeah, well,
98.
1998, yeah. I think it was
Humberto Ramos and then Brian Augustin. Vampire stuff, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So they're collecting all 24 issues. I remember it didn't come out that frequently. The 2 hardcover volumes. So if you're a fan of that or you just wanted to try it, now you have that opportunity. So, Bert, I'm sorry if I'm skipping over something. Please let me know.
Oh, don't worry, I will, but so far it has not happened.
All right.
So let's just keep on a-jumping.
Yeah, I'm sorry I got to leave soon. I apologize for that. Page 318. This is our third off-the-rack pick. I'm very excited for this. Dynamite, Will Eisner's The Spirit #1, written by Matt Wagner. In immediately.
But then go on to the next collaborator. Oh, okay, never mind. The next collaborator is someone named Dan Schady, and I don't know who that is. I think I mistook. I saw the name Eric Powell, and I assumed he would be doing
he's doing
covers,
yep. And the gist of this is, who killed the Spirit? The Spirit has been missing for nearly 2 years, and people are speculating that he's dead. It's just about the Spirit supporting characters, Commissioner Dolan, his daughter Ellen, trying to figure out what happened to the Spirit. Now look at the art sample on page 321. Gorgeous.
Well, if that is legitimately a sample of Dan Scady's art, okay. Well, I can see he signed these little images along the left-hand side of the page. The character design sheets there: Spirit, Ellen, and Commissioner Dolan. Looking good. Looking very good indeed.
Very much captures the feel of Eisner. And there's a quote from Wagner: "I can honestly say that seeing experience in the Spirit in my formative years ultimately led to my career as a comics author." Matt Wagner is, and I've said this before, he's a creator. Again, he's such a master of various genres. I just read his Shadow Year 1, which was tremendous. I've yet to read something by Matt Wagner I have not enjoyed, so I'm really looking forward to this. This is our third off-the-rack pick.
It says here it's first issue of a 12-issue story arc.
Great.
So let's hope that it's the same creative team for the whole thing.
Because I read when I just read the Shadow Year 1, which I only read a few weeks ago. That was a 12-issue arc collected in a beautiful hardcover. Tremendous.
And did Matt Wagner write all of that?
Yes, he did.
Very good.
Mert, check out on page 332. This again is from Dynamite. The Shadow, Midnight in Moscow by Howard Chaykin.
This is probably something that was originally published by DC. Yep, right there it is. Howard Chaykin, whose 1980s revival of The Shadow at DC Comics reinvigorated the character for comics lovers everywhere, returns to tell a mind-blowing tale of the Master of Men. Collects issues 1 through 6. All right, so now I'm wondering if this was a 6-issue story, but was it part of his DC stuff? That
I don't know, but I'll be reading it because I love Blood and Judgment. So. Well,
I don't love Howard Chaykin, so I probably won't pass.
Fair enough.
But I am excited. Something else from Dynamite, back on page 322 and 323, hot off their free comic book day issue, Bob's Burgers. The Belcher family of the Bob's Burgers restaurant. They have their own sitcom on Fox Sunday nights. It's been showing on Adult Swim lately. I really enjoy Bob's Burgers. I like it more the more I see of it. And they've started airing one episode per weeknight. I think it's at like 9:30 p.m.
Yeah.
So yes, it's kind of simple. H. John Benjamin plays the main character of Bob, who is this sort of hapless schlub who tries to make a go of running his own business, and you and I can both sympathize with that, Chris.
Oh, we sure can.
Yep, he has his own little burger restaurant, and his family helps with it and tend to get underfoot more often than not. They're all a bunch of very strong and skewed personalities. The humor is a little dry at times, outrageous at other times. There's a lot of fun wordplay going on. You can look for the menu board pun of the day in every episode. There's a different burger with a punning name that you can. It's kind of like their version of the Simpsons chalkboard gag. And they did a Bob's Burgers miniseries from Dynamite some time ago, and apparently it performed very well because here they are coming back again with an ongoing series dedicated to Bob's Burgers, and it still boasts creative input from the creators of the hit TV show. So there you go. It's if you haven't seen Bob's Burgers, I've just told you where you can go to check it out. It captures kind of the heart and spunk of early Simpsons episodes, but a little bit more edgy. And so give that a try, and if you like what you see there, come back and read some comics about it from Dynamite.
All right. I'm going to jump ahead because I'm sorry, Martin, I have to leave in a few minutes because I have to pick up my kids.
Oh, understood, sir.
But on page 349, this is a series I've always enjoyed. It comes out very sporadically, Berlin by Jason Lutz. There's a new issue 19, and they have the first 2 trades reoffered here as well. It's about various characters living in Weimar-era Germany as the Nazis start to build their power base. It is tremendous. Lutz's mastery of the period in terms of history, the politics, the factions. I highly recommend, if you're interested in that period of history, picking up the first 2 trades. A consummate example of why independent comics are so important. It comes up very sporadically, but I don't give a damn because clearly the creator's following his vision, and it's masterful comics. Again, I'm jumping ahead because I have to depart, but on page it's actually in the Titan Comics section.
Oh. Would this be the Blacklist comic?
No, I was looking at page 409, Flash Gordon. The Complete Library. They're doing volume 4. These are just beautiful hardcovers. They're collecting all the Alex Raymond strips. And they have 3 volumes out already. And this is the 4th. These are, if you're interested in just benchmarks in comics history, comic books / comic strips, Alex Raymond's Flash Gordon stuff, which was clearly a huge influence on Al Williamson, for example. Can't recommend that enough. Tremendous stuff, visually alone. So, if you love the Flash Gordon, the classic Flash Gordon film that we've waxed rhapsodic about many times in there, and you guys did a wonderful commentary on, it all starts with the Alex Raymond stuff. So, tremendous. My friend, I really do apologize. I do have to depart, but I trust the remaining part of the catalog is in your capable hands.
Well, thank you, Chris. Well, we here at CGS understand that family must always come first.
Well, it's just parental chauffeuring duties. But just listeners know, Murd will be reading off all of our off the rack picks that we're going to be doing because we're a little behind because of weather and personal stuff and so forth. So we're going to be catching up. So he's going to remind all of us of all the books we're going to be reviewing in the very near future. So
All right, that coming up at the end of the episode.
Yeah, brother. I apologize. I will leave you to the. I think we've covered the bulk of the stuff we wanted to talk about, but I will leave you with the rest, and I will talk to you very soon.
All right, Chris.
My friend, have a good night.
All right, and good night to you, Chris. Tell Keiko and the kids we say hi.
I will. Take care, brother.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And thus endeth the Skype call. And now, my children, you are at the mercy of my tastes and my judgment for the rest of this catalog. High Father, have mercy on you all. Okay, so on page 348, just before that Berlin title that Chris was mentioning from Drawn on Quarterly, we have something from Devil's Due Entertainment. We don't hear that name that often anymore, but apparently they scored a hit with something called Squarriors, which would seem to be well, it's similar to Mouse Guard in as much as it's about weapon-wielding rodents, but it's less epic fantasy, medieval adventure, and it's more like post-apocalyptic war zone story about what happens when warrior squirrels inherit the earth after the extinction of mankind. Apparently, this has been published in full color before. It did well enough that they're coming back and republishing the 4-issue miniseries in a black and white sketch edition. And just looking at the couple of little teaser images they give you here, it really does look like brilliant art, beautiful artwork. Check out the full page ad back on, I guess it would be page 345, and see for yourself what I'm talking about. But it caught my eye. I may actually have to check that out. Squarriors. All right, moving ahead. And I apologize if there is a bit of dead air here, but these pages aren't going to turn themselves. Page 360. Here's something new from Grant Morrison from a publisher calling itself Graphic India. Some of the things that they are offering this month lead me to think that maybe some of the investors that allowed Virgin Comics to launch and produce their upfront slate of titles it's about 10 years ago now, I guess. They are now back on the marketplace, it would seem, and they brought Grant Morrison with them because he is giving us the first issue of something he's calling 18 Days. And it's... Morrison tells us that this is not a Lord of the Rings or a Star Wars where the good guys win because they are right. The good guys in 18 Days are forced to cheat and lie and break rules to win. And it's about, a race of god men that existed before the current race of men that fought, went to war, lost, died, and so human evolution was set back millennia, and so leaving us with the schlubs who inhabit planet Earth to this day. But apparently we were all as gods at one point in our cosmic history, and Grant Morrison is going to tell us that story. And guess what? The first issue is being offered at a great promotional price of $1 for a 32-page issue, and I will just bet you that if you go to DCBService.com, you will find an even better discount awaiting you. Yes, in fact, I just found it. It's 55 cents. It's 45% off the $1 cover price if you go through DCBService.com. So please go ahead and do that. It's a new Grant Morrison concept. If you're a fan of Morrison, how can you not pay like $1, let alone 55 cents? To experience it. Also looking interesting from Graphic India, something called Mystery P.I. Supernatural investigator Darius Mystery and his partner Amos Golem solving supernatural crimes. So that could be fun. The supernatural crime genre. So continuing on from there, relying on my own little catalog marking practices here. From Oni Press on page 375, we've got an Invader Zim comic coming out, maybe 15 years after the peak of this concept popularity, but I know that Jonan Vasquez still has his fans in some quarters. He's actually not directly involved in the interior production of this comic. He's listed as Control Brain, so I guess that means he's the executive producer, the overseer of the project. And there is a variant cover drawn by him, but the interior writing and artwork are done by other people. But if you're a fan of the old Nicktoon Invader Zim, sure, go ahead and buy this. I never actually watched that, so I will not be buying that. 2000 AD continues to give us hardcover collections of Grant Morrison and Steve Yoel's Zenith, superhero deconstruction of the Copper Age. They start coming out with these in softcover. I believe that I will start buying them. I've been assured by some British friends of mine that it's worth the time and the money, probably. Under Soaring Penguin Press on page 389, we've got an original graphic novel entitled The Bizarre Adventures of Gilbert and Sullivan. High-energy manga-style art collides head-on, then bows politely in apology, with historical facts and faces to produce topsy-turvy, pun presumably intended, tales the likes of which you've never before seen. So Gilbert and Sullivan were composers of comic operas, in case you didn't know. So seeing them as portrayed as action heroes is going to be a hoot. And it's only $9.99, and probably considerably less than that at dcbservice.com. Now, as I let slip earlier when talking to Chris a few minutes ago, Titan Comics is offering us an adaptation, or probably more accurately, original comic book stories based on the NBC TV series Blacklist, and that's on page 405. So if you're watching that, try reading it too, if you like. From creators Serge Letendre and Régis Lorazel, I'm mangling the French there, but that's all I can do with French, it seems. On page 408, Quest for the Time Bird graphic novel. And it's interesting visuals going on there. It's recommended to fans of Jim Henson's The Dark Crystal, so it's at least worth my mentioning it. Titan is also bringing us a 4-issue miniseries tie-in / adaptation of the recent DreamWorks computer-animated motion picture Home, starring the voice of Jim Parsons of The Big Bang Theory. So that's a movie that I didn't like the looks of and wouldn't have touched with a 10-foot pole, but they now have a 4-issue miniseries tying into it. So if you liked it, here's something, or if your kids liked it, there's something you can pick up either to read yourself and or to give to them. Under Valiant, page 414 at Passim, we've got something called The Book of Death, which I think is going to turn out to be the equivalent of Marvel's The Last Blank story series of one-shots and miniseries projects. So it's a glimpse into the future to show us how various Valiant characters will meet their ends. And this month from Jeff Lemire and Doug Braithwaite, we've got The Fall of Bloodshot, the Book of Death one-shot. And there's also a 4-issue miniseries going on, which is written by Robert Venditti, who is doing a lot of Valiant content these days. There's a special 48-page issue of Exo Manowar, and it's issue number 38. See that on page 418. It's apparently Exo Arik of Dacia gets married, and there's a lot of Valiant guest stars thrown in there. It's a classic superhero comics tradition dating back to the days of Stan and Jack. So if you want to see how modern Valiant handles something like that, this is your chance. It's got a team of creative people involved here, including, a friend of ours, Rafer Roberts, creator of Plastic Farm. He is one of the credited writers of this issue. And so Andy Runton of Owly. Haven't heard anything from him in a while. He's writing and drawing something in this issue, too. It's a pleasant surprise. Then on we go through the pages of Viz Media and through Zenoscope. And I don't think there was much of anything that I had been meaning to mention in the book section. There's a Wonder Woman history book written by one Jill Lepore. That's on page 452, which claims to draw upon recently discovered documents, like a whole treasure trove of never-before-seen private papers of Wonder Woman's creator, to give us a little background into the character and her creator. So if you're a fan of the Amazon, and this is a opportunity to maybe learn some obscure facts of her background that were not available to be known prior to now. We've got another Shakespearean adaptation of a Star Wars movie on page 458. William Shakespeare's The Clone Army Attacketh. Yes, those are wordy, bardolatrous fun. I usually don't pay that much attention to the back pages of the book, so I think it's safe to put this one to bed then. There you are. This is our previews episode for the month of May, spotlighting those things that are scheduled to be released in July 2015. Take note, place your orders now. All right, and before we part company here, first I would like to, as Chris hinted earlier would be happening, mention and remind all of you of various off-the-racks selections for past and future months. As Chris also mentioned, we are just a tiny bit behind on our off-the-racks reviews for recent times. We're backed up to March right now, but we will be rectifying that in the very near future. Our off-the-racks picks for March were... it's kind of a time travel twofer in the person of Chrononauts from Image and Mark Millar's Millar World, Chrononauts #1, and Pastaways #1 from Dark Horse and creator Matt Kint, excuse me. And we're also going to do Howard the Duck #1 from Marvel. So those are the 3 picks for March, and we'll be getting to those very soon. There's also the matter of Convergence #0 from DC, but we're going to fold that in with a special focus Convergence episode we'll be doing also in the near future, hopefully. Then for April, the selections were Dark Horse's Rebels #1, Marvel's Uncanny Inhumans #1, and from DC, the Wonder Woman 77 Special #1. It's the Linda Carter era take on Wonder Woman. That should be great fun. Then for May, the selections were the recently released Secret Wars #1 of 8 from Marvel. From IDW, Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency #1. And from Boom Studios' Lantern City #1. Those are the selections for May. And then for June, we've got 2 DC picks and no Marvel. It'll be Batmite #1 and Omega Men #1. And then the third pick, the indie pick from Boom Studios' Strange Fruit #1. And finally, the picks for the month of July from, just decided and announced this episode will be from, DC and IDW, the Green Lantern Star Trek crossover, the Spectrum War. From Dynamite Entertainment, The Spirit #1, and from Image and Brian K. Vaughan and Steve Scroce or Scroce, help Eric, we don't know exactly which one it is, We Stand on Guard #1. And as a little segue, I'd like to remind you that all 3 of this month's off-the-rack picks can be found at a sizable discount, 50% off, at the website of the sponsor for this episode, Discount Comic Book Service. Go to dcbservice.com to check out those discounts and many other great deals to be had at their website. And it was also brought to you by Scribd.com. It's like Netflix for comics. It's a great way to read digitally if such is your inclination. So go there, give them a try, and help our show out in the process. We'd appreciate that. If you'd like to leave us an email, the address to send that to is comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. If you'd like to send a voicemail, the number is 267-702-6642. We like to hear from our listeners on many and varied topics, and oftentimes we do mailbag episodes where we share listener opinions on our show, so please feed those opinions to us. We're always happy to hear from the listeners to find out what we could be doing better. If you'd like to follow us on Facebook, find us on Facebook at Comic Geek Speak. Just search that. Our Twitter handle is @Comic Geek Speak. Stop by thecomicforums.com to comment on this and many other episodes where talkback threads for those episodes can be found. Is right there at thecomicforums.com. And if you'd like to listen to those past episodes, visit comicgeekspeak.com, where every single episode we've ever recorded is available for free download. So many hours of listening and entertainment to be had there. We'd like to give a special thanks to everyone who's been donating to the show. We really appreciate it. Could not continue to do this show without your support. And as always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes, one listener at a time.
You got it on Wednesday, and you was talking about it, going to the volume up. These guys will talk about it, everything that geeks love. From cakes to laser beams, opinions like the seasons, and everything you read in comics, movies, games, toys, artists, comic geek speak, comic geek speak, comic geek speak, comic geek speak, comic geek. Uniting the world's mightiest heroes.